Okay, as you guys will notice, I'm still wearing my WrestleMania shirt, and that's because I'm creating a batch of videos as opposed to just doing like one every day. Thought it might be kind of easier for me if I got out a little ahead. This is going to be a shorter one because I've kind of fallen in love with the idea of drafting in a kind of periodic basis and going back and taking similar ideas and reshaping them in some ways. I think this is a really cool way to create a more cohesive product, and I think it'll allow us to kind of grow, take ideas, and reconsider them from other areas. So, last time we left off, I wanted you guys to go into the political question forum and ask a political question. That's a pretty, I feel like, what can I say? It's a genius idea. And of course it is. It came from me. But here's the next step we're going to take as we move into when's this video going to go up? Let me look. I think next Tuesday. This video will be up on the 26th. What I want you to do next is to fully answer someone else's question to the best of your ability. Now, stop and think about this for a minute. We're going to take these different responses and we're going to put them into a single document that you will come back and tie up with a nice pretty bow later. So as you're doing these responses, make sure you're keeping track of what you wrote for the first bit of the assignment. And now we're moving into the second, and there will be a third component as well. But I want you to really stretch for this one. I want a nice full page devoted to answering someone else's political question. Now, when I say answering, let's actually stop and sort of think about what that really means. One of the things that I obsess about when I teach writing is a careful consideration of what the definitions of words are. Because as you'll notice, as we move further and further into the semester, definitions become very wibbly wobbly things. And our understanding of definitions can often very much color the way that we approach a subject. Now, I'm doing this quick today because I have a couple of really crazy days coming up. So all I'm going to really focus on is the next task at hand. But when I say answer a question, I really want you to think of it more as formulating a response. How do you respond to that question? Because oftentimes questions bring up all sorts of other facts. Is the question itself assuming things that are correct? Or are the assumptions of the question potentially problematic? Now, I don't want you to just go into the forum and rail at someone. I want you to try and maintain a sense of neutrality and respect. I want you to keep in mind the big word here. Hold on, let me get my pen. The big word is try. This might be a little more difficult than you think, but try to maintain a sense of neutrality, that you are honestly trying to answer what this person has brought up. Now, here's the other thing too. And like I said before, I'm going to go back and post some different news websites from different areas so that you can try to temper your response, right? And some, I want you to back up your answers with some outside data to try to find something to back up with what it is you're saying. This is a tall order for the first assignment, but we're doing this in a very informal context. A lot of what you guys put together might be quite problematic. And again, like I've said in the past, I want you guys to experiment a little bit. I want you guys to have the capacity to make some mistakes as we move forward. So if I come in and I look at your packet that you'll submit for this assignment later, I'm going to be like, I don't know if that source is as reliable as you think it is. Keep in mind, that's not an attack on you. It's not even really an attack on the source. Remember, our news sources often have goals besides truth. That's a hard pill to swallow for people who don't really honestly stop and take a look at the world that they're living in. Like, let me take a news source that I actually like. Let's take CNN. I actually kind of like CNN. And CNN has been the butt of so many jokes in the past few years. I'm not going to defend them right now. I'm actually going to point out a huge problem. What is CNN's goal? What is CNN? CNN is ultimately a business. They are a company that needs to make profit. That profit is not necessarily reliant upon reporting of absolute journalistic truth. It's not reliant upon having an objective voice. Therefore, CNN has a real incentive to sometimes sensationalize things, to chase stories that don't necessarily matter all that much in the grand scheme of things. Does that mean CNN is bad? Not necessarily. They are a business. That is the nature of the thing, right? Without money, without profit, CNN does not exist. A lot of these same flaws can be said about many other news organizations. Fox News has a profit incentive. They have a profit motive. They go about making those profits in a way that is very different from CNN or MSNBC, or even like I think the really interesting exception to this rule from a journalistic perspective would be NPR. NPR is interesting as well. NPR works very hard to remove the capitalistic profit incentive from their reporting. Does that mean they're not without their issues? They are a news organization that's reliant upon government funding. Now, I trust NPR a little bit more than I do other news organizations. Does that mean that I'm right to invest all that trust in them? Probably not. Being an apparatus that gets a good chunk of its funding from the government and from its viewers means that its existence is very much dependent on the people it's communicating with to have a favorable opinion on it. One of the things you're going to notice as we talk about sources and as we talk about information in this class is just how problematic it all can be. Every single place that you go to for information has its positives and has its flaws. What is the best way to remedy that issue? It's to have a diverse, dynamic information diet, to go from one place to the next, to look at a news story and see what multiple sources are saying about it. To get a really good sense of how the world is actually operating, you're going to want to know what different information ecosystems are saying to get the spin from multiple directions. And I've always said that when you see all the different ways that a ball is spinning, you might have a better idea of where it's actually going. But don't get too cocky when it comes to this type of stuff. There's still plenty of blind spots and still plenty of ethical problems out there in journalism. The good news is as a classroom, as students, even as a teacher, I don't necessarily have to have all the answers. We're allowed to be wrong. We're allowed to make mistakes. And we're allowed to come to an impasse when we disagree with each other about something. To step back and say, we don't have a solution right now. We don't have a way to come together on this issue, but maybe later, maybe some other time when we might have a better idea of what direction the ball is moving, right? So the second part of this packet for this assignment is simply going to be going into the discussion forum and making a good, honest effort to answer someone else's question, to respond to it in a constructive way. Use some information. Use some sources. We're still doing this in a very informal way. Keep the information that you're using because we might, and I would say very likely, we'll cite it once we get to the end of this assignment. And don't worry, I'll give you nice, good, detailed instructions on how to do that. So I don't want you thinking about our writing projects as gigantic things that you must crank out over the course of a single evening. I want them to be things that you build along and along that can grow organically and change and move. So just focus on this step for right now. And when we come back, I'll have a little bit more direction on where you'll be going next. I like this format. I can look and see what you guys are participating in. And when we get to the end of the assignments, if you're behind, you should have a pretty good path, a pretty good idea of where you need to go back and complete them. But keep up or I will come after you. All right. I will drop a train on your face. Coffee. Thanks so much, guys. I promise I'll have a cool new t-shirt next time. That was good. I hope